This one is about the gap between what I want to believe and what's really there. This has always been something that I have thought about a lot in the last 10, I guess 15 years since I discovered the idea that you could manifest or have an effect on your reality with your own mind. And, you know, we'll start with Abraham Hicks because she's the first person that I came across. And the thing about that is it didn't work for me. And it sort of did, kind of. Things happened, but there was a reason why. There was things that it wouldn't work on a deeper level. And I look at that now and I think, well, if they could manifest so much, why did Jerry Hicks die of cancer? And there was a lot of questions that I had around that. And now I know the answers to these questions, and that's what I want to get into. So what I've realized is that we have these like huge subconsciouses, and the subconscious is full of all of this programming. And if we don't go into that programming and make changes, then there's no good doing a lot of surface level stuff. It's like I kind of touched on it before from a different angle, is that, you know, that Abraham Hicks stuff is good for healthy, well people who don't have a lot of bad programming to work through and change. That said, I kind of think everybody has programming that they need to change. And so there's a few different ways that you can go into your subconscious and work with it. And like one example is I read Frederick Dodson's book, Parallel Universes of Self, and there's a great bit in that where he talks about how he had a headache and how he just manifested a reality where he didn't have the headache and switched to that reality to get rid of it. No, he said to himself over and over that he didn't have a headache until it cracked and it stopped. And I've had that headache, and what I can tell you from that is, and I know that it's the same one because of, sorry, I love Frederick Dodson, but he is, as with many of white men, got a certain kind of arrogance, and I had this, and when I spoke to a person that was a therapist of Kundalini awakenings, and she said to me, "You just have to realize that you're not that important." And it's funny because a lot of spiritual things are the exact opposite of political sense, and that's why it's so hard for people to take on a lot of this stuff. Anyway, so he got rid of the headache. That ostensibly is a good thing, but he's still arrogant. Whereas I got rid of the headache by realizing that I'm not important on a certain level. And so what I'm saying is that when we have a problem, we can pretend it doesn't exist the Abraham Hicks way and just say positive things and then still probably die or still get ill. Or we can do the Frederick Dodson way, which is to force reality, dominate reality, which you can do, or you can try and work with it. And what I've come to understand is that health is a sort of truth, and sickness is a way to the truth. In this, it's like non-dualism, you know what I mean? It's not. And so if we take things that are brutish, dualist perspective, then the migraine is bad and we need to get rid of it and just force it away, and you can do that. Yeah, anyway, I think I've covered that. And so so David Hawkins, he talks a lot about these kind of truths and stuff, and he does have some access to like what I would call like a truth. I believe in it, his hierarchy of emotions. It makes sense. He's got so far into like bringing the logical into the spiritual to create this container, which is such that is the ideal form of masculine energy. I think is like this container, and it reminds me so much of recovery and 12-step stuff, which again is this like containment. It's very specific. If you do this, you get this. But he falls short in lots of areas, and he's not aware of that. Even though he says like beliefs that you believe affect what you believe. Like if you believe you're allergic, you'll be allergic and stuff like that. But he still goes on to say things like rap music is bad for you, which I think is laughable. Like I had to quit rave music when I first got sober for a bit because it was very linked, and I've seen that with a lot of addicts. But you can, and at a deep level of recovery, you can certainly do stuff like that. He goes on about Winston Churchill, and it's like you don't have to scratch very far under the surface to find out that he was not such a good man. He wasn't liked by the working class, and it's been rebranded. And Mother Teresa, the same thing. And yeah, and it's sad because I think that these people have such amazing tools and insight, and as it says in recovery, be quick to see where spiritual people are right. And I love how the spiritual part of the internet that I frequent is very is not likely to have arguments or cancel people, and I see people having calm discussions and allowing people to grow in a way that in other parts of the world it's just not happening whatsoever. And that's amazing. But I do wish, and I'm not a big fan of feminism in the sense that it just feels like a capitalist project at this point. But on a deeper level, it's an extremely important thing. And I think that many different people have been working on different issues. You even see with Indigenous people, they're saying things like, well, obviously we've got this information, but we're still sexist. And it is just a really important thing, and that needs to be brought a lot more deeply into the spiritual whatever it is that's going on right now, but hopefully in a way that's not this capitalist thing, because people universalize their subjectivity, and that's a total failure. And so what would it be like, if for the people that are at this point, that they understand that their beliefs are the foundations to the reality that they live, what would it be like to really get aware of that and what that means in a feminist sense, and the contradictions within that. I'm going to try and think of an example now. Jim Carrey. Jim Carrey has attained some sort of no self from all the stuff he's done. He's done some amazing things. He's hit it hard. He's done everything that God asked or whatever, or he felt that he should do from a divine source. And he's realized that even Jim Carrey was a performance, and I think this is great. But I also think that a lot of marginalized people, like being trans, you realize that life is a performance, but instead of feeling like a millionaire and like you're enlightened, you have to go through a totally different arduous process, and you have to absorb all of the world's transphobia. And I think it's interesting, and that all of these paths are paths to realization, all of them in their own way. But it's funny how unevenly distributed the self-awareness is, between different sorts of people and the paths that they've had. And in a sense, it doesn't matter. It matters materially for people that don't have their basic needs met, but other than that, it doesn't matter in the sense that we're all going to the same place, and there's a million ways to get there. But it is amusing to me. There's a very specific way that white men, the caricature, the straight white men, experience this. And another example is like, David Hawkins says that he doesn't believe in astrology, and he's like, he acts like he's outgrown it. But it seems to me, it's quite obvious if you listen to him speak for more than a few seconds, that he hasn't fully, in good faith, really looked into astrology. He's done a bit of pop astrology, and then he's rejected it because it's not the basis of what the way that he relates to reality anyway. And I don't think it takes a lot. Like, I mean, for me, I got into it because no one would tell me when the pandemic was getting better, and I was without a house, really chronically ill. I had fibromyalgia, I had long COVID, I had no family support. I needed to know when things were going to change. And you could say, oh, well, this doesn't affect me because I'm enlightened. But the world that we live in is still affected. And the astrologers were the ones that told me when it was going to get better and when it was going to get worse. And it was right. And so ostensibly it works. And yeah, and I think it's really important that we check in on what those beliefs are and how they come from, privileges and ways that we've already preconceived related to the world. And again, with Richard Hawkins, he's just so he is a humanitarian, and that's why I respect him, because I respect the people that I respect in the world are the ones that are willing to risk parts of themselves for other people's freedom and genuinely selflessly give for other people. So the rest I can put it aside, but I do find it annoying how much he love and respects people that are just, the heads of companies. I don't know, we're having a whole chapter in his book of how to sell things. Like, maybe it's unfair of me because I'm not in the middle class and I don't know what it's like to live and die by business, and for that to be your survival. But I'm just ugh, can't we and maybe I've said this before, but if you don't have your autism, you don't need to try and manifest yours to learn to manifest yours. If you've got your autism and you've known every name of every yacht since you're a child, go for it. Get yourself a few yachts. The rest of us, and the same with cars, and all this stuff, all these symbols of whatever. And I crave to see people to talk about this stuff, who have who've come from the hell realm basically, and have lived in poverty and have lived without, and the way that they talk about it, and not bypass it, because it's so alienating for people that are poor, whose whole material life has been so restricted, or their sense of self, to be told this stuff. And even if it's true, I can look past it because for whatever reason. Another thing you see people say is I saw the other day somebody say that lust was a block on the path to realization, and I just thought, what a fool. You can just kind of tell that this person's a sexual civilian for a start, but two, it's only a block on the path if you believe it is. And I don't mean that to say some people have sex addictions and they need to find a way to stop, but that is not a block. That is going to be what's going to show them the door. And if you think lust is a block, is it a block? Here's my question: is it a block, or are you just kind of asexual, or you have a low sex drive and you just don't want to do it anymore? Does it have to be a spiritual thing? Does it have to be something that's blocking you from God? Probably not. And yeah, so I just think these beliefs that we have, they come from, a lot of the time, they're coming from positions, they're coming from being certain castes. I don't know what else to call it. I know that's a stretch because we're not fully in a caste system. You can still move around, but depending on the caste you are, it generates certain beliefs about what's possible and what's good. And you will always find somebody who's got the opposite, in the same way that, you know, I've covered it a little bit before, but that, like, one diet will be good for one person, another diet will be good for another. You can have two totally different diets that will bring you back to health, that contradict each other. But people like to universalize, and they don't have, like, God, I always think of, like, this statement, like, there was Athens and there was Rome. And we're in Rome. You know, Athens was small, full of philosophers, created loads of mighty ideas in a small space. Rome ruled most of the world for a big chunk of time. It was all veneers. It was shallow. And I crave to be in Athens, you know, where people, like, you know, you see this with Buddhist monks, where they're like, they sit around talking about what they believe about the world, and other people point out their assumptions. I saw a video of this the other day, and they all do a bit of a dance sometimes. And I was like, God, I didn't realize until I saw that that's what I want more than anything. But it's almost like the structure of society, the way that it is so fragile right now, and people's sense of self is so fragile that it can't, and people's solidarity and love for each other is so fragile that that's seen as such a threat. And it's few and far between that you'll find somebody that can critique your ideas well, rather than just tear you down because it doesn't match with their limited view that they currently have. And I think one of my biggest cravings at the minute is to find people that want to discuss the implications of these ideas on a deeper level, that are just being pelted at us daily. I think that might be all I need to say. I wrote some notes here. Right, that's it. When you surrender beliefs, you can be just singeing off your personality and become really boring. And that is the risk. And that is why people don't want spirituality. And that is one of the reasons why I love recovery, because recovery, you know, I sit in rooms every day with people who are just very normal, and I can just, all I have to do is, like, people don't want somebody that looks like they're an evangelicalist and they've got the best suit on. They want somebody who's wearing a nice tracksuit and new trainers. And that is what makes being recovered look successful. And so it gives me permission to like, just have a very ordinary sense of, and a very down-to-earth sense of, even people who talk about ordinariness and spirituality, you can still get, you know, you can still create this gap between the intimacy of being and the idea of having having a spiritual notion, and it just grows quite easily. Something happens. It fills with this weird carbon monoxide between the two things. But in recovery, I feel like I can just be so grounded in that. And, you know, sometimes you go from a meeting and you all go and get a McDonald's together. Like, it's that fucking normal. It's like you're saving people's lives. It's about helping, and you're saving your own life. It's not, they're not sweating the small things. You know what I mean? And I mean, they are, but that's part of the process. So yeah, being yourself, not being boring. Like, if I could make it so that, like, Frederick Dodson, he's able to, like, press one button and he gets all this money, would I want that? I don't know that that's what I need to spend my life trying to feel like I have unlimited supply of material resources. Maybe it's interesting to him, but he has said before that he bores himself. He's said that. And being boring is probably up there with one of the worst things, the worst sins for me. So anyway, I'm going to stop talking now. I think I've said enough. I hope you like the video.